Hello, hello. I think I received the signal that we're ready to go. So hopefully everybody is logged in. First of all, thank you for joining us today. My name is JC Lozada, and I want to give a big shout out to the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment of the City of New York for putting this series of master classes together in partnership with the Recording Academy and the producer and engineers wing of the Recording Academy. And so today we're going to be talking about the importance of cross-cultural collaboration in music. And we're going to structure it today. We have approximately 45 to 50 minutes to share with you some knowledge and some experiences, and then we're gonna structure it in three big chunks. I have today with me two amazing music creators. One of them is Heba Kadri, mastering engineer extraordinaire, and she's gonna be telling us a little bit about her background and her experience. And we also have with us today Alicia Bienveniste, amazing producer, bassist. She's collaborated with a list of people that you won't even believe. So why don't we get things kicked off? And I'm going to pass it on to Heba so she can tell us a little bit about her history and her introduction. Heba, take it away.
Hey guys, I'm Heba Kadri. As JC mentioned, I'm a mastering engineer. I'm based here in Brooklyn, New York, in my studio here in Dumbo. I'm Egyptian. I grew up in Cairo, and I came to the States in the early 2000s because I wanted to study audio. So I went to audio school at the recording workshop, and not thinking that I would stick around. I thought I would have to kind of go back to Egypt and get started there, but I ended up sticking around, and I got an amazing internship at a studio in Houston, Texas, which is where I was for a while. After a couple of years being a sort of a junior recording engineer, I moved to New York because I really wanted to get into mastering. And I worked in the city for a while, and then I decided to break out, and I started my own studio. Well, before that, I partnered with someone, and then now I started and built this studio that I actually this day last year was the day of its completion after a year of build out. So I'm kind of celebrating the completion of my studio. So yeah, and since my move to New York, I've been very fortunate to work with a slew of amazing artists. I've kind of known to oscillate in the world of electronic indie music and kind of off kilter stuff and experimental stuff. And I do a lot of fantastic film scores. Like I've done the Midsummer and score and Jackie. And I work a lot with an amazing artist called Ryuichi Sakamoto from YMO. And he's now a legendary electronic and composer. He's done some amazing film scores like The Revenant. It's been really wonderful to be able to move around and sort of not be so genre specific and just kind of working on such a large swath of music. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm about. And as you can see, I work on an analog desk, and I really kind of love working on keeping my chain almost entirely analog. So yeah, that's kind of me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heba. Alicia, you want to go for it?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia. Thank you, everybody, for having me today. Very excited to be joining these two wonderful people here. So I come from a very mixed family. So when I heard about this class and cross-cultural collaboration, it definitely resonated with me. I grew up in Europe. My mom is German. My dad is Greek, Spanish, and just mixed with a lot of Mediterranean area places. I grew up in Switzerland and Italy, and I moved in the US about 10 years ago. Attended Berkeley for about 5 years, and I've been working as mainly producer. I've toured on bass for a lot of years, and started writing and producing when I was over there in college. I'm very fortunate to have been working with a lot of my idols since I was little. I worked with Bootsy Collins, Anderson .Paak, 21 Savage, Khalid, CeeLo Green, Mark Ronson, George Clinton, Bruno Mars recently, Baby Rose, Mariba, and a lot of really amazing, talented people. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today and talk about everything, and just hearing about everybody else's experiences.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is going to be awesome. So let me share with you my screen really quick so I can tell you a little bit of my story too. Let me see. Bear with me here with the Zoom technicalities. Can you guys see the screen, right? Is there, right? All right, awesome. So again, my name is JC Lozada. Juan Cristobal is my full name. I'm originally from Venezuela. I'm a Grammy and Latin Grammy winning producer, engineer, and songwriter. I'm also a professor at NYU. I teach music business and music technology, and I'm also the producer in residence for the music business program. And I have my indie label called Sonic Projects, which is distributed worldwide through Sony Music. And this is a boutique label that I created so I could support indie artists. So let me tell you a little bit about my background, right? So I was born in Venezuela, right here in South America. So just by looking at the map, you can see that Venezuela is the most northern country of South America. So we have influences from all the Caribbean, from Europe, from all South America, and of course from Brazil. So right there, just by being born there, my cross-cultural thing started at a very early age. So then when I started when I graduated as sound engineer, I started traveling the world, mixing shows and producing shows. Those are some of the countries that I had the opportunity to visit, right? Already at that point, keep collecting influences, keep collecting information as you travel the world, right? In the year 2001, I moved to Miami, Florida, and that's where I built a big chunk of my career in Miami. I lived for over 15 years, and I had the opportunity to work with artists from all of these different countries that we see there, right? So you can already see the mix of things happening in my head in terms of music is what led me to collaborate with artists in all styles and genres. This is a quick screenshot of some of the albums I produced just in the last decade that I engineered or produced. And I'm showing you this so you guys can see that you have from hip hop albums to Shakira, to John Secada, to pop, to rock, to salsa. So this already starts showing you that for me, always as producer and engineer, the importance of blending cultures has always been a driving element in my creative process, right? So let me find this here really quick. So I think that culture is like a DNA, our cultural heritage, right? It's a DNA print that we all do have. And I think that embracing our cultural heritage is going to help us be unique in terms of music creation. And the quick fact is that the three longest running #1 hits on the Billboard 100 have been result of cultural blends, right? You have the latest one is Old Town Road, which is a blend of hip hop with country music, right? It lasted 19 weeks on the #1. Before that, we had Despacito, which was Justin Bieber and Daddy Yankee. You have pop and reggaeton. And before that, we had Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men, which also did 16 weeks in the #1. And again, it's pop with R&B and soul music, right? So by blending cultures, you see, we lead to innovation, breaking the mold, and then that will lead to some changes in music and hopefully another #1 for all of us. And also, of course, it creates more opportunities for playlisting because the same song, by having different cultural elements, could make it into a different playlist, which also generates more opportunities for radio, crossover in radio, because the genres the genre lines have been blurred, right? So this creates more opportunities for radio, and ultimately more income for all music creators. So the message behind this is always embrace your cultural heritage and use it to your advantage in order to be unique. All right, so let me stop sharing this really quick. And as I was saying earlier, we're structuring our masterclass in 3 sections. That was the first section. Each of us gives a brief background about our history. Then we're gonna go to the second chunk, which is gonna be how our process works, right? How each of us approaches our creative process and uses technology to blend cultures and create music. So I'm gonna let Heva take it away now to get started on the second section of our presentation.
All right, hey guys. So kind of like how JC was saying, you know, cross-cultural collaboration and the confluence of culture is so important. And in a way, like, because we're all from different parts of the world, like, it almost becomes like it seeps into you in a way that you don't even realize. You know, me growing up in Egypt as a young kid, like I almost kind of wanted to push away my culture. Like my parents grew up listening to very classical traditional Arabic music like Kulthum and Fairuz, and so for me growing up I was like, no, I want to listen to like noise and shoegaze and kind of weird electronic stuff, and sort of pushing it away in a way. And it kind of came full circle for me because sort of moving to the States and wanting to sort of absorb everything about audio engineering and sort of becoming sort of more in depth and almost like wanting to fit in, really, like, hey, even though I'm from a different part of the world, like I can get this music here. I think I went to a point where like I went a little too far and it kind of started to feel almost a little bit empty because I wasn't in touch with who I am and I wasn't filling my life with the culture that I grew up with. And so as I got older, I sort of started to realize, like, kind of delving back into the stuff that I kind of grew up listening to, that like, no, this is like a beautiful music and a wealth of culture and art that I kind of took for granted. It's like, it's almost like when I was growing up in Egypt, and this is really cheesy to say, but like kind of driving by the pyramids and you're like, yeah, whatever. But for everyone else, it's like, whoa, like, you saw the pyramids like often. So it's almost sort of the same thing. And kind of coming back to this specific topic, like there's been this amazing vibrant culture of music coming out from the Middle East, like, North Africa, all the way up to the Levant, which is like Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. And this is really largely thanks to DAWs being more accessible. It's not easy to buy instruments and have them shipped to the Middle East. So now with DAWs becoming easy, like you could just download the software and you have like all of these wonderful samples and you can go. I think post all of the revolutions and all of like the strife and the trouble that has been happening in the Middle East, like a lot of artists kind of really wanted to express themselves, and not just only in music, but all the way up to like amazing graffiti and just like this amazing expression of self coming out of like extreme oppression. And with DAWs, like you started to see like these amazing sort of underground electronic artists almost like coming up with their own genre, like not really wanting to be specifically like classical Arabic music, but just doing something that's their own and not really even being wanting to be identified as such, like let the music speak for itself. So anyone from like Zuli to Nadal Shazli to Lekhfa to Maurice Luca, Karim Lutfi, like all of these amazing artists have really done really well. And in the last last year after the Beirut explosion, I watching that whole thing go down, I felt so completely debilitated, because I don't think people realize how small Beirut is. It's like a really, really tiny city. And it's like it's sort of an amazing cultural epicenter of music. Like the history of music coming out of Lebanon is like just pinnacle. And so seeing an entire city completely decimated was so shocking. And because I know a lot of artists from there, like, so I saw that a lot of artists like lost their studios and like all the venues were gone. So like an entire music culture like completely ruined. So I reached out to an Arabic music magazine called Ma'azif, which is the first of its kind, really, where they review and critique, Arabic music. And we decided to curate a comp, which is called Nisf Medina, which means half city. And we just found, reached out to a bunch of artists that we both love. And they all like gave us original music, and it ended up being like such an amazing um, compilation of incredible music from Africa all the way to Palestine. Like Palestine has an amazing music scene coming out of there from the West Bank. So anyone from like Nicholas Jar to like artist called Eunice that I just worked with, and I worked on his album as a result of this amazing compilation, to my good friend Fatin Kanan, who's an amazing synth artist based here in Brooklyn, Dina Abdul Wahed, Fatima Al Qadiri, who's an amazing Kuwaiti musician that lives in LA, and she scored the Atlantic's music, the score for that film, which actually won the Palm, the Cannes, the second prize. I think it's called the Palme d'Or. So it's been really wonderful to do this compilation and raise all of these funds that go back to all of these artists to be able to like rebuild and the history of Middle Eastern music and Middle Eastern artists is like they've lived through many years of like destruction and rebuilding and destruction and rebuilding, and I don't think the Beirut explosion is going to stop these artists ever. But it is really nice to be able to like help out a little bit and also bring this amazing music to the forefront, because it is really so forward thinking and so incredible. Everything from like jazz music. I mean, Sun Ra, went to Egypt and collaborated with Salah Ragab, who's a really famous jazz musician from Egypt, and they came up with this incredible album that I don't think a lot of people know about. Amazing, amazing culture of jazz, and then all the way up now, which is like from to uh, some of the experimental artists I was out. So I was going to play a piece from the compilation, but I feel like it's not going to come across in the Zoom, but I do encourage you to check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heva. I think you were having a little bit of a internet connection issue the last 30 seconds, but I think we were able to get you. Yeah, just double check that. Alicia.
Yeah, so I grew up not really with a specific culture because we were so mixed and we were talking 4 different languages in my household. We still do. When we go to a restaurant, people think we're crazy. Uh, but so I really had to kind of embrace the culture of the country where I was in. So at first it was Switzerland, and then it was Italy. So I kind of always had that thing where I kind of like immerse myself in the culture of where I am and really dig in the history and everything, and then kind of make it my own. I've had the opportunity to travel around the world a lot. My mother loves to travel and discover different cultures. So that definitely adds into my bag of inspiration. Um, and yeah, so when coming like which leads into my music for inspiration. I when I first moved in the U.S., I kind of really dug in a lot into funk R&B. So between 72 and 78, I think for about 2 years, I wasn't listening to anything that was done prior or before that, unless it was for a project or a class or a show that I had to learn. But so I really dug in that area of music, and it really, I picked up the bass actually when I got to Berkeley, so pretty late. And I really closed myself off and dug in completely that area of music. And I just started like watching all sorts of shows, live shows, trying to discover and still do nowadays. Um, discover just basically new music that has been done in that area and really embrace it. And that's what really inspires me to make the music I make. Of course, all the different cultures that I have an influence on that as well. But for me, it was more so when I grew up, Motown was playing in my household. My mom loves Motown, so definitely Marvin Gaye's Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire. So it was for me always something that I had in my ear growing up. And so yeah, it was until that later on that I really dug into like funk and soul in that area, and that really inspired me into making my own music. I just thought that I could be doing more than just playing bass and playing different instruments. I really felt the need to create, write, and produce. So that leads into the importance of media and technology, because for me, I wouldn't be here and working with any of these artists if it wasn't for media and technology, which is really, really important. And sometimes people, I feel like, tend to forget. But I always feel like, it's really important to use all the technology that we have nowadays, especially with social media. I kind of like started my, let's say, career through a YouTube video that kind of blew up. And then later on through like Instagram videos and things like that. And it's crazy how, from anybody can do that. So a lot of people are saying, oh, I wish I could be doing this and that and working with so and so. And I was like, and I always tell them, well, you have everything you need to do so. Like Heba was also saying, like nowadays you don't really need much to really create, even though I'm a huge analog person and it's very hard for me to work with MIDI. but yeah, so really I really emphasize on that point, because I know some people are more introverted than others, and I'm one of them. But I also feel like people love when others share their gifts and what their crafts and what they create through social media. And sometimes, even though someone might feel more introverted and very private person, um, do it for others, basically, and you might really inspire other people. I get all the time inspired by other videos that I see on YouTube or Instagram. And like I was saying, like probably 90% of these artists I met through social media, or they've reached out because they've seen videos or anything. So the importance of that, of media, and for me, it really helped in my career, and it also really helped my inspiration. YouTube was my main source of inspiration when I first started playing, and also producing. I basically learned everything either from my peers um, or really just YouTube. So for me, it definitely had a huge influence. Um, it's also a matter of balance, I feel like, because it can get sometimes overwhelming. And a lot of times I have conversations with friends and artists, producers, songwriters, engineers, and everybody sometimes feels just super overwhelmed and feels like kind of obliged nowadays. Like if you're not, doing something on social media, or have not or don't have like a certain amount of followers, you feel some type of way. But I always feel like, whatever comes from your heart and whatever inspires you and whatever, you feel comfortable to share, it's worth sharing. And it's all, like I said, a matter of balance. And yeah, so that's mainly my take on social media, with a good balance, of course. And yeah.
Oh, hold on.
I don't think we see you anymore. Oh, there you go.
I'm back. Sorry about that. Yes. So thank you so much, Alicia and Heba. Those are some amazing stories. We all come from such different corners of the world, right? It's amazing. So I wanted to play a little bit of music for you guys to kind of like show a little bit in my creative process, how I blend different elements in a production. This is I can't tell you the name of the artist, but you're gonna hear from him very soon. He's a New York artist. He's from Colombia and New York. So already there, he's bilingual. So I'm gonna play a little bit of the song, the full track, and then we're gonna solo a few elements and we're gonna see what's going on. We're gonna do a little bit of dissection over there. So let me share my screen really quick. And here. All right, can you guys see my Pro Tools screen? All right. All right, let me play this really quick. Let's see.
Sometimes that I stop to think, sometimes that I sit and wonder if this is really what you want. Cause I see you bugging out on Instagram. Y yo me pongo a pensar si no responderá, que si dejo el celular que no tiene señal. Let me know because I'm falling, baby, I'm falling. Estoy cayendo en tus brazos, de mi corazón en pedazos. I'm falling, baby, I'm falling, and I'm about to hit the ground.
All right, was the audio coming through? Good. Yeah, so the first thing, of course, is in terms of the songwriting, right? You see how we go from English to Spanglish seamlessly, right? That's one of the first things, you know. Fun fact, Bad Bunny was the most streamed artist on Spotify globally with a 100% Spanish album, right? The album is 100% in Spanish, yet he was the most streamed artist on Spotify, right? So that already tells us that it's about the music, not the language, right? So let me solo a few elements and then we're gonna kind of like see what's going on. So there we have like a piano, like a Rhodes, but I really lo-fi it, you know, lower the sample rate, lower the resolution, pitch shifted. And then, you know, this is a piano progression that you could hear on an R&B song, on a pop song. You know, it's like a standard piano progression, right? And then after that, then we're gonna go here and we're gonna add some 808s, right? Which is also more of a pop and R&B element, right? All right, so now let's go a little bit into the rhythm. I don't know if I mentioned I'm a drummer, so for me all my productions are like rhythm based. I do believe that in modern production, drums and bass are like the trunk of your tree, and then you have your synths, your guitars, all the branches of the tree, right? And then the top of that tree would be our vocals, right? So as long as our track has consistent bass, kick drum, snare, and hi-hat, like the rhythm section, I think it should be a solid track, especially for pop, hip hop, Latin music, and so on. So now that we have those two elements, the 808 and the Rhodes, now let's add a kick drum, standard floor, 4 on the floor. Oh, sorry, there's a voice coming through somewhere, which probably shouldn't be here. Oh, sorry, here. Sorry about that. 1 second. Yeah. All right, let's see. So we have a kick drum. And then I added a hi-hat, which is doing kind of like a Latin, like a tropical music kind of pattern. If we hear that hi-hat by itself, you see it has that syncopation of salsa music. Chuck, 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 chuck. So that over there, it's already giving a little bit of a different groove, right? So if we have that with the 808 and the Rhodes, you know, we start getting into a groove already, and we hear like the R&B, the pop, but also that Latin Caribbean vibe, right? You see, just with those 4 elements, we're heavily blending different genres and different styles. But if we do it on a, let's say, tasteful way, it could become something that happens seamlessly, right? So then you'll be hearing to the song and you'll be like, what is this? Is this reggaeton? Is this dancehall? Is this R&B? What is this? You know, and then this guy comes in singing in Spanglish. So again, it's something that sounds really commercial, sounds really ear friendly. But at the same time, you cannot exactly pinpoint what it is. If it is Latin music, if it is pop, if it is R&B, right? So now that we have those 4 elements, let's add a little bit of the backbeat of the snare drum, right? Also, really quick, I almost forgot. This is a very common thing in pop music today, the vocal chops. So what I do with those vocals is that I record certain lines and then I pitch shift and put a lot of effect on it, and then they sound almost like synthesized. But vocal chops are everywhere in modern music production, but then you bring them into the Latin music realm, you know, and again, we're blending all of these elements in a seamless way. That track I produced on a Akai MPC, and then I put my tracks into Pro Tools so I can finish the production. I wish we would have more time so we could go deeper into all the production elements over there, but I think that could give us a good idea on the overall production approach when it comes to blending those cultures, right? All right, so I think that is it for our second section of our presentation, right? So now we're gonna jump into our third section, which is gonna be a little bit of a word of advice, experiences, and a little bit of the takeaway and wrap up from each of us. And then after that, we're gonna open the floor for a Q&A. So have your questions ready, because we're here to answer any questions that anybody might have. So I'm gonna let Heva get started with her wrap up and advice. Go ahead, Heva.
All right, that was really cool, JC.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you know, as far as like, I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm sorry about the weird internet. Great. Yeah, so as far as like wrapping it up, like I know somebody asked like you know, how do you take your influences into your work? And it's very hard to answer that question, because I think it just kind of it's part of you, like, you know, kind of like Alicia was saying, like she grew up in a very multilingual family, like absorbing all of these things and all of these cultures, they become second nature. And it's kind of similar to me, like, you know, growing up in Egypt, which is a country that's been colonized by many people. You know, you grew up around like a lot of French culture and English culture, and you know, it's all sort of, and the Ottoman culture. So it's all sort of, you know, sort of like a melting pot of many things. And you sort of take from it what um, what you know, and you sort of make it your own. Like it doesn't have to be something that's like, oh, because I'm from there, then I need to only be working on this specific music. I don't think like sort of necessarily identifying specifically for something like that is for me like how, you know, what I'm really proud that I've been able to like um represent both worlds, you know, the Middle Eastern culture, but also maybe like the weirdo part of the Middle Eastern culture that people don't really know about. And you know, I you know, recently, as far as like technology is concerned, like sort of talking about how DAWs have really improved. You know, there is this new browser based software that was developed by this amazing Iraqi composer and researcher that I know called Khayyam Alami, called Apotome, and it delves into the world of microtonality. So, you know, unlike the Western scale, which is all semitones, this is all quarter tones. And, you know, it basically allows you to create generative music using all sorts of tunings from all over the world, from like Asia to Africa, you know, the Arabic tunings, like which are called maqamat. There are many, many, many different tunings. So, and what's cool about that is that it's extremely accessible. Like you can just kind of go on your browser and like, you know, send MIDI into straight into your synthesizer and come up with like amazing tunings. Like, you know, if you're a big fan of Wendy Carlos, like I am, you know, she spoke at length about microtunings, and she, in fact, like, you know, she started out, you know, being deep into like modular synthesizer, but she found it very limiting because she wasn't able to like kind of get in between the tones, the intervals, and that's why she really sort of swayed more into the digital world. And I think she made a bunch of scores using like the Beauty and the Beast score that came out, you know, way, I think it was in like the 80s, using a lot of like strange tunings. And if you go to her website, you'll find some really fantastic articles about tunings. So Apotome is like a really fantastic browser that you can just go, and it creates like generative beats and rhythms and patterns, and you can choose which tuning that you want to use and really experiment. And like kind of being able to use that within, if you're from, you know, a different culture and you just want to kind of dip into something that might open a whole new door for you. So just kind of being restricted to one scale, I think you know, kind of makes us a little bit limited. There's way more in between. So yeah, I highly recommend checking that out. I think he also developed another software called Lima, which you can actually use in your DAW. If you want to check out how it works, I suggest either going to the CTM Festival YouTube website, because he does like a demo of it, or check out his demo on Fact Mag, where he kind of takes you through it and kind of comes up with a generative beat, like, you know, within 15 minutes. So yeah, I think being able to like, you know, take little bits and pieces from, you know, where you're from and like really, you know, make it your own, I think is where I'm like really, really inspired. And the music that's coming out of the Middle East and Africa right now, I think is so inspiring, because it really is in a world of its own. And in a way, like, you know, a lot of the artists that I know that are in Egypt, like the music that they're making is like, it's almost like not really accepted in Egypt. It's a little too far out for people that are, you know, within the culture, and they kind of, thanks to the internet and like things like Instagram, like Alicia was saying, and like really great uh things in Europe, like, you know, obviously pre-COVID, like in Berlin especially, there was like this amazing sort of a lot of venues that like invited a lot of people from the Middle East to come and perform there, because there was this sort of hunger for something a little bit different. So yeah, that's kind of that's sort of my wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heva. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Alicia.
Okay, a few words of advice. Something I learned from my little experience so far, still learning every day for sure. One is to always stay a student, no matter what situation you're in. I've been in situations where I've seen legends work, and I'm just entering the room as a sponge, and it really helped me to basically analyze that and really take in everything, what they're doing and how they control the room and how they read the room, and just their process overall. And that really, really inspired me, being in those situations. And also, like, you never know who you might talk to. You might think like you know more than someone, in a session context, where you'll never know what you might learn from them. I'm always entering a session as a sponge, like a sponge, I guess. Always learning from everyone. The second thing I would say is, find your own voice. it's something that I feel like now with the streaming platforms, and um, we have so much information, even through YouTube and everything we talked about, social media, and sometimes it could get overwhelming, and sometimes we could all of a sudden try to make a sound that's really not us. Of course, as a producer writer, you always have to adapt yourself to the sound of the artist you're working with. But I find it really always very important to stay true to yourself. It's a word of advice from someone I really look up to. That one time, just came back from a long LA trip, and I was in sessions and with certain artists, and I came back, and he was saying, "Oh, what have you been working on?" I said so and so. He was like, "Well, did you really feel it in your heart?" And I was like, not maybe 100%, but it's commercial, all that stuff. So it's something I really I'm not afraid to like talk about it with a lot of people, and it's a lot in conversations. Even I just came back from LA, even with a lot of producers, we just talked about that, and just to kind of always stay true to yourself, no matter the type of song you're producing or writing or engineering. Always do it from your heart. I think a third advice would be um, always try to stay inspired, and how to do so is sometimes, of course, we all have like mental blocks, inspiration sometimes, and or just like hard on ourselves, or just doubting. And I feel like it's not always positive things and always amazing flow of inspiration. And for me, something that would help me is sometimes I wouldn't force it too much, and it's okay to say, okay, now I'm just gonna like leave this session where it is, and I'm not gonna force anything out of it. And sometimes things that would help me is listen to music, just relax and just kind of like listen to some music that you might feel inspired of, or it might trigger something. You'd be like, oh man, like this is a cool break, like this is a cool drum break, like maybe I should sample that. Another thing I do is I use a lot like Serato sample. I'm not a huge sample person, but as far as drums, or sometimes when I'm stuck with ideas, I try to chop something up and then I replay it with my keyboards or bass or guitar or whatever. That's something that helps a lot. Or even just kind of like sometimes like looking for samples, digging in, whatever really works. Or sometimes it might be as simple as taking a walk. Not that deep, but that's important too, like which leads to my last point, emotional intelligence. I feel like we don't really talk about that, but it's really the core of a lot of things. For us as music people, we're all very sensitive, of course, because we make music. But yeah, emotional intelligence in the sense of a lot of times people talk about IQ, but this is EQ, which is felt. And I always talk about the importance, especially as a producer. I've learned how to like kind of like what I was saying earlier, like read the room and really make sure that everybody feels comfortable, make sure that the artist really feels comfortable and likes what we're doing. And if not, it's totally fine. Like that's something that is really important in our field. Making sure that if there's musicians involved or the engineer, that they feel also respected. A lot of times, like we don't, the artist might talk to the engineer a certain type of way, and I just feel like it's really important. Even just everybody that's in the room, that everybody feels respected. And it's our job, I feel like, as writer producers, to really kind of like orchestrate the vibe of the room and the energy, which is very important. And yeah, emotional intelligence also applies to how to connect with artists. And certain artists you might want to work with, like you might have to work that relationship first before you start making music with them. Make sure that you connect on a human level before, like, oh, I just want to work. Like sometimes we're all humans at the end of the day. And it's also nice that I've noticed, at least in my experiences, to like just kind of like develop these relationships. And sometimes it's more so straight to the point, or sometimes we find ourselves in a session, through someone else. Sometimes it's just like through social media, like I was saying, or Instagram or something, or DMs or whatever. But it's always nice to kind of like develop that relationship, because honestly, for me, the golden hours are always like couple hours even before a session, like when you talk with the artist, or even after the session, and just talk about life, and really learning them, and learning what inspired them to write what they wrote that day, or what they want to write about, what's been on their mind. Like, this is all things that I think that we don't really talk enough about. And yeah, so that really something that I thought it would be nice to bring up, as far as advice in general. Make music from your heart.
Yeah, that's the best word of advice. Make music from the heart. That wraps up the whole thing, right? That's amazing. Thank you for that, Alicia. What an amazing story. So also let me jump in. Yes, everything from the heart. Let me piggyback on that. I would say also that. You see the three of us here doing this, but what you guys are seeing today is the tip of the iceberg. For the three of us to be here, it took a lot of experimentation for me to get to that sound that you guys are hearing, and for Alicia also to get to that sound that she's got. The same for Heba. It takes a lot of experimentation. Okay, if you want to be innovative, remember you're in the laboratory, right? So you put in 2 drops of this, 2 drops of that to create your own recipe. So don't be afraid of experimentation. And of course, experimentation leads to failure, right? So we need to fail in order to recognize what we need to improve. So for us to succeed with one song, we need to write how many songs? 10 songs, 20 songs, one of them will make it, right? So a lot of experimentation. For me to work on these beats, I'm like, okay, how can I blend the reggaeton with the pop? No, this won't work. When you see a writer, the piece of paper out in the garbage, another piece of paper out to the garbage. So that happens a lot in the studio. So don't be afraid of that. If you're really trying to create something new, you need to experiment until you find your secret formula. One of the best things also to experiment is through collaboration. Try to get together with other people that are making music, and also with people that have different cultural backgrounds. Try to get in the studio with a friend, with a songwriter, with a guitar player, with a pianist that has a different cultural background than yours, and then you guys start jamming in the studio. Collaboration. If you see the biggest albums today are all based on collaboration. So the other piece of advice is listen first before we talk, before we say anything. Listen. Music is supposed to be heard. So before anything, we need to listen. We need to absorb. We need to process what's happening around us before we try to deliver our own version of it. So for me, as sound engineer, sound comes through the ears. So I need to listen. I'm in the business of listening. Before saying anything or before playing any music, I listen. So that is one of the biggest advices that I can give out there. Use your ears. Always use your ears before anything. And before you look at the screen and start looking at the little lights and the meters and the green and red, close your eyes. Use your ears. The music comes through the ear. Don't get distracted by all the flashiness and all the lights, right? And also I wanted to piggyback on Alicia's last point. The relationship with the artist is what's gonna prevail. Record executives come and go, record labels come and go, A&Rs come and go, but the artist will always be there. Even if the artist changes labels, you have a solid relationship with the artist. You will always be able to work, because the artist is always the one that goes to the label and defends their own project. So if you have a solid relationship with the artist, which is your collaborator too, that takes us to the collaboration, that will open a lot of doors, because the artist will always represent the music in front of the labels, managers, etc., etc. So again, collaboration, experimentation, which leads to failure. Don't be afraid of failing and experiment again. Listen and relationship with the artist. So I think those would be like my main points. And I think we're running short of time. We are going to have now a Q&A. We're going to open the floor for Q&A. Again, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Another big shout out to the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment of the City of New York. And of course, our family at the Recording Academy and the producer and engineers wing. So, okay, so let's open up the floor for some questions, some Q&A. All right, let me see. I have here a question. What advice would you give an up-and-coming artist with less than 5,000 followers to build their fan base and get views and listeners for their music? I'm going to let Alicia take that question because she is our social media guru today.
Not really. I'm trying to. I think the best way is to keep making music, and also kind of like Juan was saying, like collaborate with other producers, or collaborate, or if you produce your own music, like try to like make music with other people, other artists, collaborate with other artists as features or things like that. And of course, the point now with the outlet that we have, we don't necessarily need more than $5,000 to really for our music to really be heard. Like I said, with social media and YouTube and everything that we have in our hands, you know, if you just post something that you like, that you feel that represents you, it probably, you know, everybody will listen to it. So it'll probably do great. I feel like we tend to think nowadays, oh, we need a label, we need this amount of money, we need that and that. But at the end of the day, yes, eventually, like certain people, if it makes sense for them and their career and their artistry, it would make sense. But we don't necessarily need that in order to at least start. So it's important to just start somewhere, I guess. That's the most important, to just put your music out on social media, on YouTube, you know, get up with a couple of friends who maybe are videographers, photographers, and, you know, whatever. And even if you don't have that, then you can definitely do it yourself. But yeah, that's a great question. I feel like we just need to be a bit less shy and let the music speak for itself through social media, I guess.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Alicia. All right. This one goes for Heva. How do you approach working with a lot of experimental music? How can you make the master knowing that there is not a reference to guide you because it's such a unique piece of music? Oh, that's a good one. Go for it, Heva.
That's a great question. I think it comes with dialogue. Like dialogue is absolutely the most important thing. And I always encourage people when they're mastering, because a lot of times like people when they send off their master, like there's actually like no interface with the mastering engineer, or it's through the manager or whatever. And it's just kind of like people expect to send off the mixes and it just comes back and like you call it a day. And that is not, like, for me personally, it's not like how I like to work. Like I really stress the importance of of um, of creating the relationship. And even if you are a mixer that's kind of new, I always encourage to stick to one mastering engineer just for a while, because what a lot of people do is like they they just want to try everybody, and they just don't see how like you kind of reducing the variables and just kind of keeping your chain like as solid as possible, and creating that relationship, that back and forth, as you become as a better mixer, and as the mastering person that you chose, like maybe at the same point in their career, as they become a better mastering engineer, like that's how like that improvement happens. But like just kind of sending it off to like various people and then expecting everything to be great without any dialogue, that's just not how it works. And I think that's why mastering, for me, how I approach it is very creatively. Like, for example, like some of the Middle Eastern stuff that I work on, like the sort of the experimental stuff where it's, a lot of it is supposed to sound a little bit messed up. Like, the one record that I was talking about, like it's inspired by Sufi celebrations where like a lot of, sort of generative, circular, repetitive elements, and like a person on a mic that's completely distorted, like it's supposed to sound distorted, and maybe kind of taking it a little bit, a step farther, and like, maybe, dumping it down to cassette or to tape. I have a really cool cassette deck, a Tascam MK3, and I have like an azimuth adjustment that I can like even go a little bit further and then bringing it back in. So, just kind of being a little bit more creative and creating that dialogue and giving people options like, hey, I did this, like, what do you think of that? And through that dialogue, you come up with something creative and hopefully beyond your expectation, and it becomes a really fun experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heva. And I'm going to take this last question here. It's two questions. I'm going to blend them into one. The first one is, what type of software and tools do you use for the development of your final products? So as I said earlier, I'm a Pro Tools head. I've been using Pro Tools for over 20 years. Before it was Pro Tools, it was Sound Designer. So I've been using it for a long time. But I also produce on Akai MPC, which is the legendary sampling and sequencer created in the late 80s, which has been part of hip hop and R&B and pop sounds for over, almost 30 years, right? So Pro Tools for me is where, after I produce the beat on the Akai, I put it into Pro Tools like you guys saw today, and then I add all the production elements, vocals, guitars, or whatever other instruments we're gonna add. I do it in Pro Tools, and then my final process, which is the mixing, I do it here on this analog board. This is a solid state Logic, 48 analog channels, and also is a Pro Tools controller. So my final process is a hybrid system between the digital world of Pro Tools and all the analog mixing capabilities of the solid state Logic. And the last question is, how do you guys use your culture as inspiration to do what you do? So I'm going to answer really quick in my case, and I'll let you guys also jump in. In my case, my cultural background, it's all I have. Because all the information that I've been collecting through my 25 years of career or through my lifetime, all of that contributes to my cultural heritage. Not only that, but also I did 2 years of economics. I did 2 years of journalism before I decided to be formally a sound engineer. So the point behind that is that anything that we do in life, even though it might feel boring right now or be like, oh, why am I doing this? I don't want to be a journalist. It doesn't matter. At some point, it'll become handy, right? It'll become of some use for you. For example, now I'm running my own label, writing my own press releases. So I'm like, oh, good thing I studied 2 years of journalism, because creative writing, also as a songwriter, that helps. I also did economics. So the point is that anything we do, both professionally and also all our travels, all the movies we see, all the concerts we go, all of that information goes in our hard drive. And when we're creating music, it's a part of the process is to dig through our files internally in our brain and start pulling out different files that could work as an influence for our music project. So cultural background and information, it's all I have, right? So in my case, it just comes in automatically. And I think Alicia kind of like touched briefly also into that, right? That it comes naturally for me when I'm writing a song. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, it sounds like a salsa song. But when I'm doing the beat, it's like, oh, it sounds like an R&B. Why don't we put them together? All of those things come naturally. So that's all we have. That's all the information we have. It's our cultural influences. I'm going to let you guys jump in really quick so we can wrap. Heva, you want to add to that?
How I use my cultural background, I mean, honestly, like I use it in the way that, like, everything that I've learned, being very fortunate enough to be able to like leave and come here and absorb from the from the studios that I've worked at and the people and the amazing people that I've worked with, using the skills that I've learned, like using that to help others from where I'm from, to like bring their music more to the forefront and levitating them to allow their music to be just as good as anything else that's come out here. So I really try to, as much as I can, reach out or kind of continue to have a presence, and like talk to, meet new artists, and listen, and constantly listen to new stuff that's coming from out of there. And obviously my job is a mastering engineer, so I'm always listening to new music and connecting people. Sometimes, like, if there's an artist that I've worked with that I think would have a really great chance with a label here that works with international artists, like, I'd connect them. So I think just giving back is really what I want to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heva. Alicia.
I think we touched on pretty much everything, but for me, I'm really inspired by music from different cultures. So for me, something that could be cool sometimes is to bring in those elements in a session to someone that might not be familiar with those music. And just kind of have it being an inspiration in the song. Be like, oh, check out this music from like, I don't know, from France. And I'm not too familiar with music from Europe, just because I kind of grew up like listening to American music, but of course influenced with a lot of different countries. But that's something that could be cool to like kind of just bring in, even if you're not necessarily like Heba Juan, like completely connected to one specific culture, and it's more so like me, where you kind of like a melting pot of different blend of mix of cultures, is to kind of like interest yourself and tap into different music from different countries, and bring those into your session, and kind of like always stay, like I was saying earlier, always stay curious, and always stay they say childlike, have the curiosity of a child, always never lose that. So that comes back to that, there's always new music we can find out about, and that's the beauty of music, is that it's kind of infinite in a way. So take inspiration from that, I guess, would be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alicia. And I think there's a last question here that we're going to try to squeeze like really quick. How do you get over a creative block or being unmotivated? So in my case, find what inspires you. Some people would say, oh, I go and listen to music. But then for me, sometimes it's the opposite, because for me to listen to music that is happening in my head, I need silence. So some people would say, oh, just go and listen to different music and this and that. In my case, I would be like, let me have silence. It's like colors, right? If you don't have darkness, you cannot enjoy the light and the colors, right? So if you saturate yourself with that inspiration that you're looking for, you might be, occupying the space on your brain instead of freeing that space for the sounds around you to come in. Go in the park without your earplugs and listen to the birds, to the cars, to the people talking. Listen to the silence, so then you can find the music inside of you. Also find the things that motivate you and inspire you, not necessarily listening. In my case, when I had to build my studio here because of COVID in my apartment, I pulled out all my vinyl records, put them all on the wall. So I have here behind in my wall, I have Bob Marley, Sade, Michael Jackson, Sinatra. Every morning, I don't listen to them, but I look at them and I think about their songs, and then that brings inspiration to my head. I just try to open space in my brain for new ideas to come in. Otherwise, if the space is occupied all the time by listening to music, doing emails, listening, watching, learning, you don't have free space for new things to come in. So that's kind of like maybe one of the things that I like to do when I'm trying to find inspiration. Open space for new ideas to come in. And I'm going to let Heva and Alicia jump into that point, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, kind of like an extension of what JC said. Like, I think for me personally, taking care of yourself and taking time off and taking breaks, a lot of ear breaks, and not working. When I was younger, I was told like you have to like literally kill yourself and work constantly 7 days a week, which obviously is important. You got to put the work in, but you sort of do get to a point where you do have to like kind of slow down and work specific number of hours in order to do your best work. Like if you're working overtime constantly and you're coming back to the studio, for me with mastering, my ears are going to be fried, or I'm going to get sick. My immunity is going to get worse. And then I won't even get stuff done. So taking breaks, going on vacation, saying no when you need to say no, and working on things that you really believe in. Like really, the more you surround yourself with a community of people that you, artists or musicians or producers people that are not like people that are good people that you really want to hang out with, that you enjoy being around. I think that inspires everyone, because when you're surrounded by a good person and someone that you really like you're going to want to really prove yourself and make them happy. So yeah, just surrounding yourself with positivity and cutting yourself slack.
100%. Alicia.
I feel like I already touched on that subject earlier, but what I would say mainly is that one, it depends the person. For example, for me, I love listening to other types of music that usually sparks inspiration for me. But like I said, sometimes it's as simple as, like they were saying, like a break, a walk in the park, or a vacation, if possible. But and also, like I was saying earlier, like different ways to create. Like if you tend to create with, like, I don't know, guitar chords, or I don't know, melody or lyrics, or keys, chords, or whatever, try different ways to approach the creation of your music. Like try to mess with a sample, or try to use a new plugin, or for me, what inspires me a lot is buying new gear. So for example, a new piece of equipment that might be a source of inspiration, when sometimes you're stuck, as simple as like new sounds that might inspire you to create and go somewhere where you're like, oh wow, I would have never gone there, but the sound sparked that inspiration. And lastly, I would say sometimes what would help in those cases is just to collaborate with other people. Sometimes we tend to, depending on the person, but I tend to, close myself off and kind of like do everything by myself from A to Z, record all the instruments, like engineer everything, kind of pre-mix everything, and then get up with the artist, or come up with the music with the artist, but on my own. And sometimes it would, if you're stuck, or if like the inspiration is not striking, it's nice also to collaborate with other people, another musician, another songwriter in the room, or bring in like, a different ear that might spark that inspiration. So yeah, those are, I guess, pieces of advice that would unlock that inspiration.
Yes, awesome, awesome. Yes, I wanted to add to that for us to wrap it up, that when you feel stuck, it might be because you're too comfortable. So get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. That's the only way to grow, right? Like we said earlier, experimentation. So when you're like stuck and things are not flowing, maybe you've been in that position for a long time with the same creative process, with the same, like Alicia was also saying, for me, buying gear, of course, Alicia and I, well, the three of us are super techie, right? You see, we're all full of gear. So for me, just buying a new sample machine or a new piece of gear will explode in inspiration, right? But yes, get out of your comfort zone. If you're too comfortable, it means you're not growing. So get out of your comfort zone so you can continue to grow. So with that, I wanted to wrap up. And again, big shout out to the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment for having us today. Heva, Alicia, thank you so much also for joining us and for all this amazing panel. And also thank you so much for to the Recording Academy, Producer and Engineers Wing. And thank you so much for listening to us, to all the attendees. And the session is being recorded, so you guys can check it out later on the website. I think it's going to be on the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment website, so you guys can check it out. And again, thank you so much for joining us, JC Lozada, Heva, and Alicia. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.